Ladies and gentlemen, we're delighted that you've joined us on Let's Face the Issues today. We're talking about an issue or a subject that I believe ought to be top priority for us to hear, understand, and be prepared. I'm asking the question that's the issue today: will we have another pandemic or pandemic? The head of the World Health Organization said we will. In fact, he's already made a bold statement that it would be more difficult and more tragic than what was called COVID-19. And I am asking the question, and I'd love to hear from you. We've got Dr. Reed Sheftall that's with us today. He is one that I would say is probably the foremost in research and decision making on what COVID was and what it wasn't, and the lie that we've been told by the FDA and by the CDC and others. Dr. Sheftall, again, thank you for being with us today. Let's kick off this session of our broadcast and interview with this. What would you say is what is the most important thing that we, i.e. the people, America, what is the most important thing we've learned from this COVID pandemic, and how the people responded, and how we should view that for future tense?
The most important thing we've learned is not to listen to the authoritative voice. Mm-hmm. They were wrong on everything. Mm-hmm. Absolutely wrong about everything, starting with the WHO director. Yes. Who said that there was a novel coronavirus when he had absolutely no basis for saying that, causing the atypical pneumonia cases they found at the so-called Huanan seafood wet market. Yeah. That was debunked a few weeks later, and at that point, this entire charade should have ended.
That's right.
Because it was debunked that all those people that got atypical pneumonia came from the Huanan seafood market. Remember, that's the whole basis for saying there's a causative agent there.
Yes.
But a bunch of the people that they thought were at the Huanan seafood market had no connection to it at all, had gotten their atypical pneumonia some other way. So it wasn't a novel coronavirus transmitted by an intermediate animal.
So again,
natural zoonotic spillover.
So again, we'll review what we've said previously on previous interviews. Where did this come from? Was it in a lab? Was it created by man? Is it something that was normal? Is it something that was created? And what, in your opinion, professional medical opinion, was the rationale behind this being used, and Fauci being the head of that in America?
Okay, you've asked a bunch of important questions there. It's hard to answer all of them real quick, but let me take them one at a time. Mm-hmm. My opinion on what it was well, we know that the SARS-2 virus did not exist. Mm-hmm. So if something doesn't exist, it didn't come from the Wuhan Institute of Virology, and it didn't come from the Huanan seafood wet market through an intermediate animal. We know that.
Right.
Neither of those theories is true. Mm-hmm. Because the virus itself doesn't exist, and I can prove it very, very easily. As a matter of fact, I prove it in Volume 1 of Sanction the COVID Murders. It's proved in there. Now, Dr. Youngblood, let me address the second question, which is the more general question.
Yes.
What the heck is the United States and we've also found out that our military was involved in creating this scam. Mm-hmm. Isn't that upsetting?
Yes.
It's very, very upsetting to think that they treat the United States citizens and the public in general, the world population, this way, where things that are done to them under the veil of medical care and helping the public do the exact opposite. It's very upsetting.
It should be upsetting, and what I'm finding in some of the research that are done now through Robert Kennedy being in the CDC, there's been a move and carried out then by President Trump to reinstate these military people and to, in fact, give them back pay, which I think is a good move. Many of them have refused to take the reinstatement, but take receiving the back pay for having been so maltreated in relationship to forcing them to take the vaccination.
Let me tell you something about the history of the United States government treating our military in a very bad way when it comes to medical treatment.
Yes.
I could talk for hours about this. I'll try to keep it as brief as I can.
All right.
You've heard of the Spanish flu of 1918 and 1919, haven't you? Well, we've done experiments, and they were done by Milton Rosenau on Gallops Island in Boston, and Dwayne Ritchie on Angel Island in San Francisco. You've heard of Angel Island. That showed that there was no transmissible causative agent for the Spanish flu. They did all these experiments trying to get a sick person to give it to a healthy volunteer. And they could not transmit the virus from a sick person to a well person.
But they wanted us to believe that was the case.
Sure, they did. They wanted it to believe that it was a contagious pandemic, and they couldn't get one. They took 100 volunteers, and they had the mucus from a sick person injected into them, and they coughed in their face, and they spit in their mouth. They did every possible thing they could to transmit it to another person, and they were unsuccessful in every attempt on 100 volunteers in both locations, Gallops Island and Angel Island.
So is it possible to take that information and transition then with COVID and say the same thing?
There was no transmissible agent in
Correct.
COVID. There was no SARS-2 virus.
Yet we had people in America that was taking their grocery bags, spraying them down with water outside, spraying the groceries down, wiping the counters down.
Sanjay Gupta on CNN was telling us to wipe our groceries down, and then he was giving masks out to the other people on CNN that his daughter had knitted with holes so big you could see through them. I mean, come on, it was absurd.
Yeah.
They were trying to instill fear in the population.
That was the whole point that I made.
Yeah, that's right.
Yes.
So that they could scare people into taking this poison vaccine.
Frighten us into submission.
Right, and this poison vaccine, which normally nobody would take.
That's right.
Because all the test animals died when they tested it on ferrets. And you might wonder, well, why do they use ferrets all the time to test these respiratory vaccines? And the answer is a ferret. You've seen a ferret before.
Yes.
It's kind of like a mink, it's a little fuzzy animal. Their respiratory systems are almost exactly like humans, same size and everything. And so that's why we use ferrets to test for respiratory diseases, okay?
Okay.
All right, but they all died in the experiments with messenger RNA vaccines. Isn't that amazing?
And
did they go and inject it into the population? They didn't even test it first?
Yeah, and it's supposed to be efficacious for us, yes. I believe we have a caller on the line. Go with your question or comment, please.
Yes, Dr. Youngblood, thank you very much for your program.
Thank you so much.
Dr. Youngblood, thank you, Dr. Youngblood. I got a question for the doctor. As you know, Dr. Youngblood, we have the Bible code. I sent you the Bible code on this mRNA vaccination, COVID-19 vaccination by Pfizer, Moderna, Pfizer vaccine. And Dr. Robert Malone says that it's a biological weapon. My question is, can you confirm it's a biological weapon? Also, does it add a third strand to your DNA? Because they showed at Queen England lighting up a light that shows 3 strands of a DNA sequence lit up. Also, other people saying it adds another third strand to the DNA. Can this gentleman confirm that or not?
Dr. Sheftall, I'll throw that to you.
Okay, that's a very good question. It's very complicated, so I'm going to have to give you a little bit of a lengthy answer here. I'll be as brief as I can. When the vaccine was approved, like I've already said, they used the PCR method for amplification. As you know, PCR is an amplification process. It cannot be used to diagnose a disease, and that was another problem with the whole fraud. But the actual vaccines that Pfizer made that were injected into people were made by the E. coli plasmid process. Okay, that's a different process of amplification. You let the bacteria amplify it for you. But that was never tested in people. And the plasmid that was submitted to the FDA by Pfizer is different than the plasmid contents that were sequenced by Kevin McKernan, who's another MIT guy. He actually got some vaccine files and sequenced what was in there. And we found out there was SV40 promoters and enhancers in there, and DNA contamination on the order of 642 times more than the FDA is supposed to allow. This is this was disclosed when we forced the FDA to disclose all this information they were trying to keep hidden for 75 years. Now, the answer to your question is yes. DNA can go from the vaccine and get incorporated into our DNA. Yes, sir, it can, and it's been proven that it does. And if you get an SV40 promoter in front of an oncogene, onc means cancer, as you know, If that promoter gets in the wrong place relative to an oncogene, it can express cancer in the recipient. And let me say one more thing about this. SV40 stands for simian vacculating virus number 40, and it was a contaminant in the 1940s in the polio vaccine. And it's still wreaking havoc, but it was put in this plasmid that E. coli, that Pfizer used on purpose. They didn't even disclose it to the FDA. They sent a fake plasmid sequence in. When we sequenced it, we found all sorts of stuff that weren't supposed to be in it, including the SV40 promoters and enhancers, which are DNA. Now, let me just say one thing really quickly that will really upset you, and I don't mean to upset you, but everyone needs to know this. If you inject this vaccine into a young lady, a young girl, and those SV40 promoters and enhancers get incorporated into her DNA in her gametes, okay, her reproductive cells, she will transmit that process onto her offspring. And she could be a 7-year-old girl, and she gets injected with this, and then she passes it on to her babies.
Yeah, it's not.
She becomes 25 years old and gets pregnant and has her own children. They'll have it too. It's so criminal, it's unbelievable. And it's all in my book, and it's go ahead, I'm sorry.
So you're saying that it can add that third strand of DNA then?
Yeah, well, not a third strand. No. It just gets incorporated into the double helix of DNA that we all have.
Okay.
The enhancer takes it from the cytoplasm into the nucleus, and then it's a strand of DNA, and it gets incorporated right into our DNA.
So what Kevin has said, it could be called a third strand, though theoretically it is not.
No. It gets incorporated right into the double helix of our DNA.
Yes.
And if, like I said, if the SV40 promoter gets in front of an oncogene, which is normally a inert gene, it'll activate that gene and cause cancer in the recipient. And we're finding a much higher incidence of cancer now than we did before the vaccine came out.
Absolutely.
It's hard to get I just went through it myself. It's hard to, and I didn't take the vaccine, of course. I just got cancer like we always used to get it. But it's hard to get an appointment with an oncologist now. They have like a 3-month waiting list. And before you'd go right in if you had cancer. It's just become incredible.
Absolutely. Kevin, you got any further thoughts or follow-up?
It's just, there's a lot of people talking about how it's your reproductivity is cut off. There's women that can't bear children anymore, and it alters the men's semen count and everything.
Kevin, by the way, no, go ahead. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you. I was just going to say they knew that beforehand. They showed it in the rat model. And they didn't even disclose it to the public.
Yeah. Doctor, so you agree with Dr. Robert Malone that this is a biological weapon? You agree with him, right, Doctor?
Well, I don't know what exactly the definition should be of a biological weapon. Right. I can tell you that the purpose of this thing was to get people to take the vaccine. Now, let me tell you a little bit about what the vaccine can do based on a timeline which will appear in my second volume, written by a kid named Spartacus. Do you happen to know who he is?
No.
Okay.
No.
He writes a beautiful timeline of the reason why these vaccines were injected into everyone. It's based on a 75-year effort to damage our blood-brain barrier. Now, you're familiar with Neuralink, Elon Musk's company, aren't you, Kevin?
Yes,
okay.
Yes, absolutely.
In order to put the device into a person's brain that Elon Musk is doing with his company, you have to do a thing called the craniotomy. You have to open the skull.
Yes.
Take a piece of the bone off and insert the Neuralink device and put the brain cap, the skull cap back on, and wire it shut, and it heals and all that. But if you can damage the blood-brain barrier, we're going to be able to get into people's brains through IVs. Because we'll be able to create nanobots that can go in through the blood-brain barrier and, get this, change the action potentials in the neurons in the brain. And once you start being able to change the action potentials, you're going to be able to change people's thoughts and behaviors eventually.
We become
So in that
robots.
respect,
Yeah.
We become robotic.
yeah, well, we want our enemies
Yeah.
to become robotic
Yes.
so that the generals in a war can be, their behavior can be controlled by us. You see where we're going with this?
Yeah.
Go ahead, Kevin.
Yeah, Doctor.
But do you
yeah,
understand
Dr.
the principle behind this? If you want to call it
Yeah. No.
bioweapon, go ahead and call it that. But
No.
we're way ahead of that now. Oh my Lord.
No.
We're
Absolutely,
into the
Doctor.
details of how they're doing it.
Doctor, this is what Washman Brandon Briggs seen. He's seeing that when you take the mark of the beast, the chip in your right hand forward, it knocks out your brain. Your soul is gone, and you can't do what you want to do in your mind. So I agree 100% that this is all leading to the mark of the beast. They want to put the chip in your brain and control your mind completely, your soul.
Kevin,
Yeah,
you're exactly
and
right.
remember back on a fundamental level, Kevin, the way that our brain works is with things called action potentials, okay? The nerve either fires or it does not fire. That's why binary mathematics is used to model brain function. Zeros and ones. 1 means there's current flowing through the circuit, and 0 means there isn't. Okay? This is how computers work. All right? It's based on a binary system.
Gotcha.
Either current flows in the wire or it doesn't. Either the action potential fires or it doesn't. Okay? So being able to put nanobots in IV fluid and have it cross the blood-brain barrier is like the holy grail of controlling behavior in people.
Absolutely.
And thoughts and everything.
and
like
I
you
believe-
say, taking away their soul maybe.
Yes, I believe that we're in the demonic track to having that accomplished based on the future fulfillment of the Word of God. And I believe that's where Kevin is speaking of. Kevin, thank you so much for your call. God bless you as we
Thank
keep
you,
looking
Dr.
up.
Youngblood.
Yeah, thank you, Kevin.
Thank you,
Thank
Doctor.
you so much.
Thank you
Great
very
questions.
much. Thank you.